English translation 53rd Contact, Thursday Ascension, 27th May 1976, 1334.
Today I bring back the drawings to you. You should only label them according to my instructions.
You mean Mr. Rice's things in Munich?
Sure, here they are.
Ah, this is a Bohemian forest for me. Just as incomprehensible as the drawings of Mr. Rates himself.
You will understand when I give you the explanations later. Now take the pencil here and write everything down according to my instructions.
Suit yourself.
I have about 15 minutes of work because I write their drawing tables according to Sim Yase's instructions.
That should be enough. More is not necessary, and more would also not be advantageous, because we must not skip the evolutionary stages with too precise information in this regard. You should not pass on my original drawings to Mr. Rice because they should belong to you. It should be enough for him to have a print of it. You call that a copy.
You say it aptly with both names. Should I give Mr. Rice any further explanations? You know, it would be very hard for me, because I cannot make any connections from these drawings.
That will not be necessary. My explanations will suffice, and Mr. Rice will certainly understand them. At least he should be able to do this according to his own designs.
This reassures me very much, because I have never been able to easily unravel drawing puzzles in this form.
Nor is it necessary, as I said. But now, listen, the round spiral illustrates the creational structure of the whole. It is evident from this that the entire creational power is considered to be the center, but that it forms both the inside and the outside. The powers of the new creations emanating from creation resonate through the interior and exterior and also develop in this form. The arrows pointing inwards and outwards embody this. They should make this process clear. The corresponding 7 levels of development, which are subdivided again into 7x7 mature forms, correspond both to the conditional evolution stages of the life forms and to the energetic forms. So it becomes obvious by the fact that the overall structure takes place in the form of a spiral and is absolutely uniform for all forms of matter, both the fine material and the coarse material. Also, this evolutionary form, which cannot show any other form, is of universal validity. Therefore, if the Earth human chases after other concerns and assumptions, then he or she moves in fundamentally wrong paths and misconceptions, because the entire universal life in every form is creationally directed and is not subject to any degenerations or variations. Like the creational power itself, any other existence has to follow the same paths. However, the Earth human is ignorant and unknowing. Consequently, he or she searches and draws illogical conclusions from sham observations. There are no 7 levels of the Sol system because all existing levels are all universal. Consequently, no worlds and suns or whole systems have separate levels. So there are truly only 7 all-universal levels, which in their overall structure are, however, also arranged differently than assumed by the terrestrial human being. The presentation you have given me is thoroughly wrong and corresponds exactly to the earthly human errors. In order to correct this error, I have used his own representation to better understand the designer, according to which he is able to recognize the truth if he really makes an effort to do so. It will be understandable to him that I cannot grant him the last and most exact data, because he must compile these himself. For his better understanding, however, you should give him those records which I have already given you at an earlier time concerning the levels of development. Also, I want you to explain the following to him. The attached diagram, made by me according to his own design, shows the true structure of all levels, from the spiritual of origin to the material and relative perfection. He may recognize the individual intermediate values of the different levels from my earlier exposition, so that I do not need to name them another time, and have therefore omitted them in the graphic representation. However, the following should still be explained. The Earth human being is to be urged not to complicate all things and to seek the truth where it can truly be found. This, however, is truly not complicated and also not scientifically conditioned. On the contrary, it is very simple, thus it can be understood by a child. The universe is the inner and outer body of creation. In its entirety pulsates the universal mind and the universal consciousness and the power of life, of existence in general. This is permeated by everything, and everything is permeated by it, so everything forms a unity in itself. All life and all evolution admitted to it also takes place in this unity itself. So the universe is the inner and outer body of creation at the same time. Everything existing in it is also inner and outer at the same time. But all life springs from this itself, and in it all developmental evolves. So every creation has emerged from inside and outside, develops inside and outside, and perfects itself in the same form in order to enter into the absolute power of the creation as an absolute power inside and outside. The consistency of this fact can be represented schematically with the graphic representation, whereby the outer two semicircles record the egg-shaped spiral of creation, in which even everything develops spirally from the absolute power to the absolute power. The connecting lines from the material primary level to the absolute levels of creation embody the permanent connection of the two material forms of existence of a gross and subtle nature, which are maintained by willpower at the exit from absolute power until re-entry into absolute power. The same applies to the material intellect will. The different levels are also recognizable from the representation, if my earlier explanations are called in to help, whereby it can also be recognized that the Earth human is to be classified into the 6th step of the 2nd level of development, which corresponds to a still lower state and says that these life forms only slowly advance to the frontiers of the recognizable truth and only attain the most minimal realizations of spiritual values. But this level also reveals that the Earth human is currently living in an evil dichotomy between lies and truth and dismisses everything that corresponds to the truth. They believe themselves to be very logical and infallible and blaspheme the truth by denying it through unreasonable and unreal explanations and assertions. This is also the level at which the greatest errors of spiritual and consciousness-based concerns are committed, because the life form is torn back and forth between the will to know and research and not yet understanding the truth, unfortunately often misled by elements of megalomania, who are still incapable of any logical understanding and thinking and want to distinguish themselves precisely because they seem to be much more than they are in truth. But under no circumstances should their understanding be respected, for they are the false prophets of the New Age who do not accept truth, accuse it of being a lie, and make lying assertions that they have attained their knowledge by mental transmissions from higher levels. And these kind of prophets are unfortunately many, especially at the present time when they are making a bad impression, even wanting to force contacts from other levels and lyingly deceive their masses of followers, consciously trying to kill every truth by malicious lies and slander, as well as certain elements of the lowest form trying to undermine and destroy our task by accusing us of lies and falsehood. They go so far as to falsely claim that they have received this through telepathic information from higher life forms as truth, although they themselves are not capable of any form of telepathy and do not possess the least knowledge of spiritual and consciousness-based concerns and their modes of action, such as the two forms humans, Bertossi and Ahrens, which boast untrue telepathic abilities and a spiritual knowledge, but which truthfully only consciously use them for charlatanry and deception.
You are a very rough shot, Sim Yase. Actually, I did not want to tell you anything about it, but now you have come to talk about it yourself. Mr. Ahrens has written a letter to me with many questions, including whether he has telepathic abilities for which I should ask you. Mr. Bertossi also wrote a letter to me, so dirty and primitive that I do not want to tell you the content. But also Mr. Ahrens accuses you of lying and so on. On Ta's advice, the two letters are not published because their contents are so unpleasant, nasty and primitive that they should not be imposed on the readers. The same applies to later writings by Messrs. Bertossi and Ahrens, who started a wild campaign against the Pleiaren and Billy.
You should not get upset about it because especially this Bertossi is a very unworthy worm, and his spiritual knowledge is less than that of a child. He is probably a halfway good professional, but he cannot call more abilities his own. But he has no more telepathic abilities than Ahrens, although he boasts such abilities as well. But everything is just lies, fraud, and self-deception. We are also aware of his slander, which he directs against us in a rather primitive form, but we do not want to concern ourselves with such primitive matters. These two men who are close friends are too unworthy, too dishonest, and too truth-negating to be taught any better. You should therefore not continue to seek and care about them. Both are no more than two evil false prophets of the New Age, megalomaniac and characterized by rare stupidity.
Are you really serious?
Certainly, another form of speech would be flattery.
Why?
Both men are at a very low level of spiritual and consciousness-based development, which is only slightly higher than that of their old personalities in their previous lives.
You have knowledge of their personalities in their former existence?
Sure, I tried to do that after what happened on the 21st of April.
What were those two?
They, that is to say their old personalities, did not lead an enjoyable life, and since then they have only made very little progress in their development with their new personalities.
Tell me, what happened to them?
Their stay in otherworldly realms was very short. Consequently, they still carry parts of their former personality within them, because their overall consciousness block incarnated again too early, and they withdrew too much old information from the memory banks.
You are very meager with your information. But if I am not mistaken about your just-made statement, then it actually means that both vegetate in a very low consciousness-based standing without a complete personality change, because otherwise their new personality birth would not have taken place so quickly. Am I right?
Sure it is, and everything is very unpleasant about them.
Do not be so secretive. Can you not tell me what is going on with both of them?
Sure I can.
Then speak up.
It would be better not to talk about it.
But now take it easy, girl.
If you say so, fine. The old personalities of Mario Bertossi and Michael Ahrens were already close friends with equal ambitions at the time of their former lives, despite a great age difference. The former personality of Mario Bertossi bore the name August Wilhelm in that earlier life and was born in 1867. Michael Ahrens' personality at that time was a man named Albert Zeton, who had learned the profession of a hairdresser and—
Wait, you mean a barber, a hairdresser, a haircutter?
Sure, did I mispronounce myself?
I guess you could say that. Nowadays they say barber, haircutter, or hairdresser.
Thank you. So, Albert Zeton was a hairdresser and at the same time an innkeeper in his own restaurant, which he owned in Germany in a place called Elberfeld in the Rhineland. Albert Zeton had been married since 1871 to a woman named Maria Herkel, with whom he had several children, but of whom only 2 daughters lived in 1883. The reason I am mentioning this year is because what you are about to hear was very important in the lives of the Bertossi and Ahrens personalities at that time. Wilhelm Bertossi moved into the house of Zieten Arenz as an apprentice hairdresser, and there the misfortune began. Zieten Arenz was of a vicious, brutal, and irascible nature, struck his wife Maria and the children with severe beatings, was an alcoholic and adulterer, and of a sloppy nature. So he had also a still unmarried mistress named Alberts in Cologne, where he often stayed only for the purpose of lustful sexual satisfaction. Thus for days he was away from home, where he left the family to their evil fate and put the apprentice Wilhelm Bertossi as his representative over his family. The young man Wilhelm Bertossi, who was just as devoted as his superior to drunkenness, fornication, brutality, and irascibleness, soon became his bosom friend, who enjoyed his fullest trust. Thus came what had to come. One day in 1883, Zieten Arenz went back to his mistress in Cologne, while Wilhelm Bertossi played himself up as deputy head of the family. Having long since been tired of the only supervising role, he had for quite some time been thinking about the rather foreman's pretty wife Maria, for whom he had sexual desires in spite of his young age. On this evil day now, the cravings of his sexual desires overwhelmed him, and he committed the deed. With persuasion and violence, he tried to persuade the woman Maria to have sexual intercourse, but the woman also resisted with violence, so Wilhelm Bertossi in a matter of minutes glowed with a furious rage and seized a heavy hammer, which he struck brutally on the woman's skull. Overflowing with blood, she collapsed and lay on the ground, unconscious and slowly passing away to death. The man Wilhelm Bertossi now, at that time was only 16 years old, hit the completely defenseless woman several more times with his bare fists, in order to tear up her skirt and trouser dresses and sexually rape her. Afterwards, he simply left the life-threateningly injured and desecrated woman lying and sneaked into his chamber, where he lay down unscrupulously and soon fell asleep. A short time later, his friend and foreman, Zieten Arenz, came home and found his slowly dying wife lying there covered in blood. He immediately thought of Wilhelm Bertossi, who alone could have been responsible for this infamous act, but before he could catch him, Zieten Arenz was arrested and incarcerated by the police, after which he was later blamed for the death of his wife. For this he was found guilty and sentenced to death by a court hearing in Elberfeld from the 28th of January 1884 to the 2nd of February 1884, after which the two former friends with the great age difference had meanwhile become mortal enemies, because the young Wilhelm Bertossi denied any guilt and accused Zieten Arenz of the murder and rape of Zieten's wife Maria Herkel. Due to certain circumstances, the death penalty on Zieten Arenz was not carried out after all, thus he spent the rest of his life in a dungeon. But the real murderer, Wilhelm Bertossi, made a confession 4 years later, which did not help the imprisoned Zieten Arenz at all, because he was not set free again and remained imprisoned until the end of his life. He died after approximately 25 years in the dungeon. Wilhelm Bertossi, the real murderer of Maria Herkel, unfortunately suffered an inextricable confusion during my investigations, so that after his confession I am unable to show any further data and information about him. But it should suffice what I have otherwise learned about their lives as other personalities at that time. And as I have already mentioned, the two men Bertossi and Arenz have not made any significant spiritual or consciousness-based progress with their personalities since then in their last life, and still live today in discouraging forms corresponding to the time and life of that time. Their negative concerns are only minimally better than in their former lives, and they are still lying just like their personalities before them.
That is a horrible story.
Sure, but it is the truth.
That should be verifiable.
Certainly.
Do you think That at least about the trial you mentioned in 1884, there are still records and the like to be found that could prove your statements?
It is to be assumed that such papers should still be detectable.
Then I will do my best and ask in Elberfeld. That is really a concern. Now I can understand the mean machinations of Mario Bertossi, as well as his and Arendt's primitive letters. I would really like to publish everything in our monthly magazine.
That might even have advantages, because these two men are very primitive about destroying all truth, no matter from which side it is spread. Both are fundamentally opposed to the truth and try to undermine and destroy it with malicious lies. When they resound in raging anger, they are even capable of much worse things.
You make me quite thoughtful.
You should also be careful.
So it will be all the better if we try to explain and clarify the issues you just told me about these two. Because if this story becomes public in certain circles, then it will be a very big breach in their unfair and dirty machinations.
Perhaps it would really have its advantages.
Anyway, I will see what can be achieved. The event was not 100 years ago and should have been written down and stored somewhere. I will try to get behind it as soon as possible and investigate the matter.
It will certainly cost you a lot of work.
And even if, I am sure it is worth investigating. But let us leave that, because I still have some things I wanted to ask you. Have you ever heard of the theory that the monkey could descend from humans? It was told to me a few days ago. I know the old crazy Darwinian theory, that humans are descended from monkeys. What idiocy! But that the opposite theory is also applied. I do not find that so absurd in the relationship. Namely that certain monkey-like creatures, which I would like to call ape-man, such as a certain type of snowman, which I have seen, are actually descended from humans in the form that they have degenerated to the extremely possible state. But I do not want to address the actual monkeys and so-called apes like orangutan, which means forest man, the different gorilla species, the chimpanzees and the bonobos, but really only the ape-man, whose existence is well known, but which as usual is doubted and denied by scientists and know-it-alls, etc.
Your question is illogical. On the one hand, you are aware that the human life form corresponds to a special creation act of the creation, and consequently is not derived from any other form of life, nor is it able to return to other forms of life through any natural or unnatural metamorphic processes.
I did not say that. You certainly misunderstood me. I was talking about ape people, not apes.
Sorry, it is my fault. Of course, it is what you say. The monkey forms, however, are no human relative life forms in the sense of a real relationship. They are probably very human-like in their interests, but they are a pure fauna life form, whose earliest origin leads back to the semi-flora world. They are indeed the most highly developed animal forms of this kind on the Earth, at least in the present time.
You mean that other animal forms will develop to such a high level?
Sure, because that is evolutionary according to the development of the planet itself. But this will take more than 1,000,000 years.
A meaningless matter when I consider that I have been walking the earth here and there as a so-called normal person for millions of years. And it is even less important when I consider that billions of years ago I was still wafting around somewhere on a primeval world as an amino acid element. First to become a human archetype through 1,000,000 years, and then slowly to become a body-like human being, who one day was born an absolute idiot, and took millions of years to really become normal. What else is a 1,000,000-year-old? I really like to wait, and then at that time I will entertain myself as a new personality with these animal intelligence beasts.
You are funny, but you could not be so wrong with what you said as a joke.
You actually believe. This is crazy.
You might wonder.
Also, you make me joke. But let us wait for the 1,000,000-year anniversary. I still have some time until then, and time will tell. But now something else. I'm interested in something very special. How does the bond between Amata and you, or yourselves, bind?
They are teleprojective in nature.
Oh, so now I have caught you after all, at least approximately.
You are deceitful in your questions. It is not fair.
Do not be stricken right away. It was important for all of us to know this. So it was not just for me. That is all I want to know because I really do not want to rummage around in your little secret. It was only a matter of knowing the form of the connection. You can keep the secret for all times as far as I am concerned.
It will not take that indefinite period of time. Then I will tell you, and excuse me, obviously I put an inappropriate word on you earlier.
Do not linger over it. I already know what it means. On the other hand, I am pretty tough. But if you still allow me, then I have another question regarding Amata. You see, I do not want to trick you again. It only interests me why you are making this teleprojective connection. This is not just about connection and a simple contact, is it?
You're putting it together correctly. Amata has certain direct back connection to an Aryan group, the value of which is of great importance. This group, that is to say their descendants, still live on the earth today, but their whereabouts have remained unknown to us, and it is precisely this group that we are trying to find, as this is of importance to us.
Then it is a quite valuable group of people, if I am not mistaken.
You are not mistaken.
Thank you. I am satisfied with this. It opens up a lot of new perspectives for me, which,
as usual, you will logically assemble into a complexity and conform to the actual facts. I already know that about you, but please do not talk about these things because they are not ripe yet. Decades may pass before then.
you are pretty accurate about your time at least once. That is not like you.
Slowly, I find my way in the earth-human manner of conceptualizing and thinking. I also have to learn these things first, and we are not immune to mistakes.
Which a certain Mr. Mario Bertossi and a certain Bertossi bosom buddy find hard to address in you. In their stupidity, the two of them actually think that you must not admit to mistakes you have made, that this is probably a disgrace and a sign of spiritual underdevelopment, because Bertossi and Arends have written to me literally, because Simya Se has admitted to too many of her mistakes.
There is no need for an answer, for only lack of spirituality, and the lowly intelligence itself cannot understand that errors and mistakes must be made and admitted. I hope you did not answer that primitive low intelligence.
You hit the nail on the head. The letter will remain unanswered forever, even if the gentleman turn green and blue with anger.
I am happy about your decision. But now I would like to tell you something. Please pay my dear friends my sincerest thanks and my dearest wishes and greetings. For what they already know.
You speak almost like an earth human, but I am happy about it, and I will be very happy to try to fulfill your wish. But, tell me, what do you know? Did you do something behind my back?
You know it is our secret.
Oh well, then excuse me. I do not want to ask about that.
That is sweet of you.
But now set the final point, because you always make strings sound that should be better muted.
Then think of the last farewell. I felt a bad pain in me.
That is why I traveled and stewed in the devil's kitchen myself. You know, girl, a loving and honest friendship can often be very difficult.
I also perceived that in a painful, fine, fluidal manner. But please do not talk about it anymore, because I want to think about these things first.
I will be very happy to help you with that. I just do not understand that you have lost these valuable things.
They are not, but it seems we did not pay enough attention to them.
I will think about it too. But now I have something very special again. On the 8th of May, I received a letter from a Mr. Köhler from Mannheim, Germany, in which he wrote to me that he had learned through a trusted person that I was in direct and telepathic contact with you, whereby it is interesting to note that various people have recently reported, that they had learned through real mental abilities that our contacts were indeed genuine and of great importance. This only in contrast to the primitive assertions of Bertossi and Arends. Now Mr. Kohler wrote to me that older reports from France from 1959 to 60 reported that French contact persons had joined together in a secret order, Friends to the Stars. After, in the years 1953-54, beings had appeared from the Pleiades in France and had taken the contact persons for around 10 years to the Pleiades on visit. Mr. Kohler writes that he contacted 2 of these people in December 1974, after which he was told that the contact persons had received secret and extremely important information from the Pleiades, about which they would have to remain silent. Since 1966, the contact had ended, and by the beginning of 1977, a comprehensive work consisting of 3 books and more than 200 documenting photographs was to be put on the market in France and Portugal. In another letter, Mr. Kohler writes me, after I had asked him for the addresses of the contact persons, that he unfortunately does not know them, because he only knows the names of some persons who would help the Friends to the Stars, which seems to me to be a rather primitive name, by the way. Look here, these are the names: Georges Galichon, Paul Moroni, Gilbert Ferrol married couple, and Séverine Sauvant. He writes about these names that he could only infer from their conversations that they all lived in a place near Albret, in France. What is this all about?
It is a very dirty lie by these Frenchmen. Their existence is completely unknown to us, and so far no life forms of our worlds have ever had contact in such forms in France. Also, no beings of our Federation have ever had such contacts in France. Obviously, it is a fraudulent and lying work of some profit-seeking people who want to achieve financial advantages through fraudulent machinations. Or it is a work of primitive deception for the purpose of ridiculing the truth. Even the lie that these alleged contact persons had been visiting the Pleiades for 10 years corresponds to such primitive ignorance of the facts that the assertion itself is a lie. It is not worth it to say any more words about it.
Thank you for the information. Your explanation is perfectly sufficient. But now I have another question from our Schulheis in Biel. He asks for a place which must be somewhere in Africa and over which no airplanes could fly. Also, it is not possible to take photos from above because only white spots would appear on the pictures. What is this all about?
I do not know anything about that. If it is not joking or nonsense, is it really Africa?
That is what I thought I understood.
I really do not know anything about that. The closest one I know is in Madagascar, which is a dimensional gate.
You mean the same effect as in the Bermuda Triangle and the Japanese Sea?
Certainly, but if you ask him for more information and more precise location details, then perhaps I can make an effort if it is important to him.
I want to ask him. But he has another question concerning some photos. He asks for the authenticity of a photo series of a certain M. Antonio Giannuzzi from Lecce in Italy. The photos are alleged UFO shots. Do you know this man, and are his photos worth anything?
I told you before not to ask questions like that anymore.
It is important for our Schultheis. That is why I come back with such things.
Sure, I understand, so I want to make an exception, but it really should be the last one. Antonio Giannuzzi is not a serious man, he is a joker. He's never taken any real pictures of beam ships or anything like that. His pictures were created by throwing objects into the air and photographing them while flying. A very easy undertaking in order to manufacture fraudulent photographs.
Well, then I have a personal question regarding the Siracusa in Sicily. You told me he was a real visual contact or something, with the reservation that you had to be careful about his religious expressions, because they were his own works. You know, I have relatives who live nearby there, at least temporarily, and I would like to ask them about Siracusa.
It is not worth it. because Siracusa can only give a few real details about some flying objects that he has seen, and through which he mistakenly received impulse telepathic messages from foreign beings once or even twice, which he did not know how to use and distorted beyond recognition, which I have only recently learned.
Gosh, girl, did he not have any personal contacts?
No, he never had any of those. His contacts refer only to different object directions and to one or two erroneous impulse telepathic messages, which he mutilated in his incomprehension. Unfortunately, the exact number can no longer be determined, but the impulse telepathic messages were no more than 2. Besides, these messages did not reach us.
Then he never saw the occupants of the ship?
No, that is perfectly proven.
But he had made the occupants' drawings made or had them made.
I am aware of that, and it is already about fraud. But now I really do not want to have to deal with such things anymore, neither now nor in the future. Fraudsters and charlatans are in great numbers on the earth regarding the beam ships, etc., and it is not valuable to continue talking about them.
As you wish, your wish is my command. It is disgusting to have to deal with creatures like that all the time.
Sure, but you are quite stubborn in silence, that is what you said, right?
How so?
If you do not want to talk about certain things like what happened this morning.
Oh, that is what you mean. But that is really not worth mentioning. I just think you could have given me a hint that you made yourself scarce. Suddenly, I just had no more contact and everything was impermeable.
Several times I have suggested to you that you immediately seek the vastness if any elements stand in your way or spy on you. Together, we have reached an agreement that you, like I, will leave off at such occurrences and will be responsible for our contact at a later date. I stuck to it while you stayed with your friends and chatted with them.
I was not sure whether you would yet still summon me to somewhere. I really had not reckoned that you had simply left. After all, you could have given me a radio call.
Did I not do that?
Sure, otherwise I would have gone away and made myself scarce with my friends. Thus I had to argue with the idiot for better or for worse.
There were 2 of them, not just 1.
We did not notice any of that. It was as if there was only one person around.
No, there were really 2 men, but I lost the monitoring of them when I flew away. I thought that you would also leave immediately, and I no longer concerned myself about the matter. Have you seen these 2, or either of them?
I guess you could say that.
Then there has been trouble. What happened?
Oh, it was not anything bad.
Now please speak. Your words suggest evil. Do not hide it from me.
Whatever you say, but it is really not worth mentioning. It was just another guy banging around with a toy gun.
And speak up.
So what? Nothing has happened.
Your statement does not satisfy me. You are hiding something from me.
Fine, if you want. The idiot shot my agenda book, which I had put in the breast pocket. Then the bullet, a small caliber, bounced off a strong metal plate, which I wore under my clothes as a precaution. I was prepared for the whole thing, because I had dreamed the incident 3 different times before.
So that is how it is, and then what happened?
Well, the guy went off like a lightning bolt after that, like a shadow. In the dark night, I was only able to see a blurred, whitish spot, the one who took off. When he then came into good position, I just shot with my pistol and conjured for him the bright straw hat from his skull. After that, he must have disappeared like a devil's bullet, because we could not find him despite searching immediately.
Of the shot-through agenda that Billy carried in his breast pocket. Photo, Hans Schutzbach. Of the shot-through agenda that Billy carried in his breast pocket. Under the book, the armor plate, where the bullet bounced off. Photo, Hans Schutzbach. Billy's jacket and his gun. Clearly visible in the upper center of the picture, the rejection point. Photo, Hans Schutzbach. The hat that Billy shot off the shooter's head. You can clearly see the bullet hole in the hat. Photo, Hans Schutzbach. An assassination attempt on Billy by Jacobus Bertschinger.
It was on Ascension Day, the 27th of May, 1976, when the four of us, that is to say, Hans Schutzbach, Konrad Schutzbach, Billy and I were on our way to a new contact with the spaceship pilot Sim Ya-Se from the Pleiades in the Tostal Zürcher Oberland. As driver, I steered the vehicle according to Billy's instructions, who in turn received them continuously by telepathy from Sim Ya-Se from her beamship. Somehow I felt a bit queasy during this trip, because for several days Billy had been telling me again and again that he was struggling with a dream that had been appearing all the time lately. It was that in the dream he was hit by a bullet that bored into his left chest. And since Billy was very attentive to his dreams, he took this as a warning, so he asked me to cut an armor plate measuring 19.5 x 16 x 0.7 centimeters and drill 2 holes into it as a support. And since we had just such bulletproof armor plates, which Billy had ordered from the car company Frey, for testing purposes the armor plates were used for armored vehicles, some security transports, I made the desired one from one of these plates. On the finish piece, there were 2 bullet holes of caliber 7.65 mm, which were caused by Billy's bombardment. Well, in this night, the midnight hour was already over. I fastened together with Hans Schutzbach as well as with his brother Konrad the armor plate, through which we had still pulled a wire at the 2 drill holes on the inside of Billy's heavy Canadian flying jacket at chest height, because Billy had seen the bullet impact in this area in a dream. At the same height there was a breast pocket on the outside, into which we put a larger agenda book, 16.5 x 10 x 2 centimeters. Billy was now wearing this padded jacket because he had the sure feeling that the dream event could happen this night. Shortly after leaving Billy's house at Wiehaldenstrasse 10 in Hinwil, OZH, we noticed that an unidentified car was following us at a distance all the way up to Schmidruti in Tustel, where we turned onto a municipal road into the Thurgauerland region and stopped at the so-called Sederleg, from where we could still observe that the car following us suddenly stopped, after which its lights were extinguished. We ourselves then left our car in the Sederleg car park and walked along the field path that led to the rear Sederleg. At a small gravel pit to the right of the path, which was adjoined by the forest, we stopped and listened into the night. Suddenly, Billy said that he had just received a message from Sim Ya-Se telepathically that something was not quite kosher, so we should go back and go home again, because under the circumstances it was not advisable to make contact. Standing on the dirt road, we discussed what Billy was saying, that maybe it would be good to get to the bottom of this, and that Sim Ya-Se, if there was no danger, was still available for contact. So, he wanted to explore the area. Both the Schutzbach brothers and myself agreed with this. After this decision, Billy quietly walked down the dirt road, running along the edge of the forest, and we were able to follow his dark figure well in the rather bright night. He might be about 20 meters away from us when he suddenly turned around and came running back quickly. Arriving at our place, he said, breathing quickly, that he had heard extremely suspicious noises down at the edge of the forest, and that a strong twitch had rushed through his back, for him a clear sign that real danger was looming. Billy was standing to the far left of us on the dirt road when a shot was fired from the lower edge of the forest, which obviously hit him in the chest because his right hand shot up and grabbed for it. Then everything was deathly quiet. Even the previously audible noises of the nocturnal animals had fallen silent. It lasted about a minute. Then we heard creeping noises, just like a human moving through the grass. And indeed, down the slope, which we could see clearly, a dark figure rushed by, but we lost sight of it only seconds later. The sounds of the fleeing figure could still be heard, however, and quite obviously the man was running to the Sadeleg parking lot. Listening to the sounds, I saw Billy suddenly rip his pistol out of its holster. His hand goes up, and then a fire lance flames out of the pistol muzzle, while a thunderous shot shattered the night silence. And before we, Hans and Konrad Schutzbach and I, had recovered from our surprise, Billy said completely calmly, "I shot the hat off his head." I just saw the guy just for a second against the clear sky when he ran out to the parking lot. Although I was used to Billy's shooting skills, I did not take his words at face value, but I wanted to see for myself if there was any truth in it. So I ran up the dirt road with the brothers Schutzbach and Billy towards the Sadeleg parking lot, when I suddenly saw something bright lying on the side of the road. And indeed, what I picked up was a light straw hat, which, as we later found out in the light, had a hole going in and out, and clearly of the caliber 7.65 mm, which Billy used. It was simply unbelievable for us, especially because the distance from where Billy had shot to where we found the hat that had been shot through was more than 100 meters. On top of that, it was night. When we examined Billy's jacket, we found that one bullet, undoubtedly a small caliber bullet, had penetrated the left chest side of the thick Canadian flight jacket, then shattered through the 2-centimeter thick agenda after the inside of the jacket had been completely torn to shreds and smashed on the metallic armor plate. Unfortunately, the bullet could not be found anymore, because it had obviously been lost due to the movements during the race to the parking lot. We had indeed had enough adventures for that night, so we took the shortest route back to Hinwell and had some coffee at Billy's house while we talked about what had happened and looked at the shot jacket, the agenda and the armor plate, which had saved Billy's life as a result of his repeated dreams and his right actions. And to all of this I can testify that together with both Schutzbach's, all but the two 7.65 mm bullet prints, and that the agenda book was also completely intact when I put it into the breast pocket of the jacket, after which I never let Billy as well as the two Schutzbach brothers out of my sight for a moment, so that he could not manipulate anything, and everything actually happened, as I described it, and as we all experienced it.
So that is how it is. It is the same for you again. It is typically your manner. That is why I can be reassured, because you always know how to help yourself.
Thank you for the flowers. But now I will have to go, because otherwise my wife will be scared. She already got going when she heard about the story in the morning. Nothing happened at all.
I want to possess your nerves myself. You are really good. Enough has actually happened, and it goes without saying that your wife must be worked up about it. Come on, I will give her a little joy. There is tremor grass growing over there. I will pick her a little bunch. Then give it to her with kind regards and my love to your wife. Also give her a kiss from me.
She will certainly be happy. I will also make her a huge bouquet with daisies, corpse flowers, fern, leaves, and forget-me-nots.
You may be right that she will be very happy. She well deserved it. Come on, let us go over there and fix everything up.
Okay, General, let us go.